I forgot I put that there. All right. Um, it's a weird time of day, and it was a sort of ad hoc kind of thing. I haven't checked anything, and yeah, so I'm not really that prepared. But I thought that what I'd do is just take the opportunity today to talk about kind of where my head is at in terms of like where I go, well, professionally, content wise, all of that stuff. Right now, it's funny because I've got new graphics and I'm going to have to add LinkedIn in to there, and I'm probably de-emphasizing X. Okay, I am pretty much, and I know I say this every time. I've accepted the fact that I can't leave X in a like professional capacity. You just can't, right? Because it's historical stuff. It's old tweets. It's sort of all that stuff. It's kind of yeah, all of those things, right? But what I can do is cut my use down to the bare minimum. I mean, no one's seeing my stuff anyway, so there's no real point, but I will just keep it like ticking along. And like when I schedule things, automating a post, dropping in like to check messages and stuff, but really minimizing my use. Okay. Because that's really at the end of the day, I think that minimizing your use of social media in general is a good idea, right? And also getting back to, God, this is feels like 2012 all over again. Feels like the same advice, but getting back to basics and using social media in a way that actually works for you. Okay. I think it's gotten away from us. I think especially sort of post pandemic, and we sort of all got sucked into the vortex of social media a bit, and we're kind of, we're coming out and there's, sunshine and things are kind of, but I think it's good to take stock on your relationship with social media, what you get out of it. There are people who see social media as just tools, okay, for better or worse. I mean, I'm talking about people who abuse platforms as well as marketers and stuff. There are people who just see it as media. It is broadcast. or whatever. But then you've got people like myself who see it as part of their story and experience. And a big part of why I think minimizing my use of these things is and making sure it's more targeted is because it is easy to rationalize when you are overusing it, right? You are kind of, oh, well, it's my work to study the culture wars, therefore I have to sit and read the trending stuff. It's like, well, no, I don't. I know what's happening now. I've got answers and I can move on and I can move away from it. I don't need to be reading, Greco-Roman statues talking about how women should be breeding and shit. I don't need that in my life. It doesn't achieve anything. But anyway, so got new graphics. I am sort of focusing my attention more on LinkedIn, mostly because there's an audience there, mostly because people want to hear what I've got to say there. And I'm spinning my wheels on X. Like I said, I got many, many hours. The last 5 years has pretty much been dedicated to fixing Twitter and making it like better and stuff. And that, I think that we're at the end of the road with that. And you need to take your own advice and go, well, this isn't working. It's not working. No one's seeing it. No one's engaging. No one is interested. It is an idiot factory where everything that you say is spun in a negative light. Everything that you say is like everyone just wants you to keep dumbing down and dumbing down and dumbing down. What does that mean? You write a tweet. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? It's like this. It's like there comes a point where you have to accept that the smart, funny, professional people that were on Twitter in, say, 2010, they're not there anymore. And it is just people going, what does that mean? What does that mean? And people yelling at you all the time. And it's like, well, I don't know, Google it, look it up, look stuff up. Click on the link that's in my tweet. Or just Google the phrase I'm using, and that is like Twitter now. It's an idiot factory, and it's just getting dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber. And it's very difficult to distinguish between sort of person and bot. I thought the verification thing would work, didn't work. Okay. The reason why I thought it would work was because I thought that credit card verification, like with Stripe and fraud detection, would address the problem of bad actors buying blue checks. But clearly that hasn't worked. Like bad actors, Elon Musk wants those bad actors on the platform. Okay. He's just decided to monetize the culture wars and all of its weaknesses, all of Twitter's weaknesses. He has now just monetized it and licensed it. Okay. So it's basically, he is licensing that app to radicalize people further, he sees users with contempt. And he treats users with contempt, and anybody who kind of facilitates that, I have a moral objection to. And, I think it's time to call it. That said, I acknowledge that we can't really use it, right? We can't really stop using it. There's still people on there that I like. There's still people that I want to maintain connections with. Like I've built some celebrity following over the years, like celebrities who follow me, right? I'm not a celebrity, but, I've built those professional connections that I still would like to, I'd like to stay in touch, right? It's sunk cost stuff, right? I've invested a lot in the platform, and I don't want to lose touch with people. And so, you can't just fully detach from that, right? And people don't go, where's Taya? I'm going to check where she is. You've kind of got to pop up from time to time. So, but what I'm going to do is I've just, minimal skeleton, absolute skeleton. Okay. So you can follow me on X if you're still on there. I'd recommend you leave and follow me elsewhere. LinkedIn is the main place where you can find me, and obviously YouTube. I'm looking at sort of reshuffling the social media strategy, but that also leads into the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, because I've had a change of heart. It may look like I've just flipped and pivoted or something to where there's an audience, but that's not the case. It's because I started listening, part of the reason why I started doing YouTube was because I fell into the culture war stuff because I was listening to women, okay, paying attention to a policy problem. And that's the same thing now, okay? And that is the problem with AI. So people had been asking me about ChatGPT, what I thought about OpenAI, kind of hadn't, I was always, obviously the interaction that people don't realize just how much AI has been running our lives for a long, long time, right? For many, many years. Everything from, your Netflix recommendations to your social media feed to, all of those sorts of things, everything like insurance claims, Centrelink payments, all of those sorts of things, right? There's a form of AI running in the background that does that stuff, right? And I understand how it operates. I understand how it works. I kind of understand the technical stuff. I do try to stay abreast of developments, right? I looked at the models, but a lot of it was not really critically looking at it, and I hadn't gone deep into the dark side of it yet. Okay, so obviously, like a lot of the content that I was doing was kind of skimming the surface of that dark stuff, the dark patterns, platform manipulation, bad actors, and how these things are abused, right? Obviously, with Twitter, that's a big problem. The bots, troll farms that, mass reporting, getting people, having no recourse. Like I've talked about that at length. There's like how many 100 videos, how many, 2 or 3 hours each, easily thousands of hours, right? 1,000 hours plus of content there. Okay. Where I've kind of brushed on various issues. People keep trying to drag me into the individual issue, like the turf stuff or whatever, right? When I first started my YouTube channel, I kind of just leaned into it and went where the content took me. But obviously I moved away from that. But in terms of this channel, okay, I'm undecided about whether I'm going to spin out a different channel and just keep this for sort of live streams and riffing, kill the channel altogether and start over, which I don't think I will do, mostly because I have nothing to hide. Like there's some cringe stuff there where I kind of was wrong, but I'm okay with being wrong. Like who cares if people are wrong? And anything, if people want to destroy me with a clip or whatever, that's already out there. It's already going to happen. You have to surrender to it and go, well, that was a crazy time. It's like with COVID, when people lost their minds. It's like, well, we can either accept that we just all lost our minds a bit, have a laugh at ourselves, go, yeah, fucking okay. Well, we all lost our minds. And you're going to be wrong. When you're doing live streams this much and this often and talking and putting yourself out there, you're going to be wrong from time to time, a lot, right? Well, I like to think I'm right more than I'm wrong, but you're going to misjudge things or misread things, especially when it's live and you say things you're going to misspeak. I've already accepted that's going to happen. Okay. We're in a world where any deepfake can do that now to me. I surrender. Okay. Now, just surrender to that. You have to surrender to it. But it doesn't mean that I have to necessarily keep going with that, right? And get back to where I was, which was my first video, which was around brand yourself. 2018, where I talked about the problem with recruitment tools that were basically like killing your reputation with recruiters, and they were selling this data. So basically, brand yourself, I might actually revisit it. So brand yourself is this piece of software where they sell 2 products. Okay, one product is a subscription where you can do reputation management for yourself. So you go on there, you connect your social media platforms, so Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all that sort of stuff. And what they do is they give you feedback on your reputation, right? They attach a reputation score. And what I did that because I was curious, right? Because I like to test these things. And this was 2018, because I've always, Salesforce, Radian 6 was like the big enterprise grade tool back in 2011, I think, and they bought by Salesforce. So there's lots of these different tools. Brand yourself is sort of that consumer level, sort of base level stuff. But mark my words, Salesforce and those big recruitment companies, those bigger tech companies, all have a variation of these products. Okay, I just use Brand Yourself because that was the one that they sell one thing and then they're selling your data and other things, for something else. So Brand Yourself, you log in, you connect your Twitter account, your Facebook account, all of your social media. And then what it does is it assesses your tweets for profanity, things that might affect your reputation, right? And it gives you a reputation score in a meter, like red to green, right? Mine is 0. And you know why? So if I had it, I obviously ran it through my account because, I'd use myself as an experiment. And because it basically came back as, it wasn't like you expect the fucks and the cunts and the swearing, right? You expect that to trip up the algorithm. You expect jokes. But what I didn't expect was that it penalized your score based on fairly innocuous things like making a joke about Xanax. So the word Xanax came up, drugs and alcohol, okay? Saying God, saying religious stuff, okay? Hillary and Trump and those sorts of things, right? It was actually penalizing you and making recommendations about your reputation based on saying like basic things like talking about drug and sexual stuff. Saying something about making a joke about like one of my ones I've joked about is like it is worth going back and looking at the Brand Yourself video like all the way back, because I did actually laugh on the video. I gotten a lot better at live streaming since, by the way. There's many levels of cringe there, but you'll see me crack up because I was just sitting there and I was laughing at my own jokes and I was trying to make a decision about whether I wanted to delete them or not. And I didn't, because I was like, no, that's a good joke. Fuck it. So then I decided to try and see. Yeah. So I'm saying these tools exist, right? So that was why I just felt like this was years ago and I felt like I needed to say something. And then when Megan Murphy got banned, I saw what the platform manipulation that was going on. And again, the ethical thing. And I was like, no, this isn't okay. Now, I leaned into the Yaniv and the turf thing a little bit because it was crazy. And I learned from that. I learned from that experience, which was that you should show more restraint. You can't necessarily dive into an issue because, again, I don't regret that journey into that stuff, but it wasn't a great use of my brain and time. But it was the starting point for my broader stuff around censorship, around platform manipulation, around how bad actors can use political issues to, separate people and nudge people and radicalize, all that stuff. All of my work comes back to that because the gender wars kind of represents a sort of the fault lines in many areas around these issues, right? I wish I'd handled it differently. I wish I'd been a little more measured in the way that I did it, but I thought it was crazy. I thought it was so crazy and so over the top that when I started talking about it and defending it, I had no idea that it would take me years and years and years to dig myself back out. The heady days of GC. And the thing is, it was just, hi, Simon. So hang on, let me put the chat on because I'm quite happy for this to be interactive today. Give me one sec. Yeah, hi. So the heady days of gender critical brainworms. So if you've only been across the sort of the gender critical stuff issue, okay, regardless of how you feel about this stuff, okay, the trans versus feminist stuff, okay, you've seen sort of the trans rights movement be used in a way by various people to spread, you're seeing it all the time. Okay? But the early days, it really was just a sort of mini war, okay? So when I first started paying attention to the whole thing, you didn't have actors like Kelly J, you didn't have like Posey Parker, you didn't have Tim Pool wasn't involved, Trigonometry weren't involved, those sorts of far right people they weren't involved. What this was a microcosm of a small war, very insane but small war between radical feminists, okay, who do material analysis, and trans rights activists in Canada over Bill C-16. This was before Jordan Peterson even really got involved in this stuff. I wasn't even aware. It was he kind of, I became aware of Jordan Peterson sort of separately through the incel shit. I wasn't necessarily very interested in that. I think people I think people tend to wash over the history there and pretend that the gender critical movement was always, I'm not going to say movement, gender critical cult was always this way. It wasn't. It was co-opted by various far-right forces, of which Trigonometry and Tim Pool and various actors were involved in escalating. And the reactionary takeover was very rapid. A lot of us got caught up in it because I was a rad fem. I've always been a rad fem. I hadn't really thought about it. It was radical feminist analysis. And I was like, oh shit, this is fucking crazy. And I saw that Megan Murphy kind of got banned. And I was like, hey, I don't agree with what she did, but I think that maybe that's a bit. Then I saw the algorithms be tripped up and that whole platform manipulation around that. And I felt the need to defend her. But I then subsequently saw her drift in that direction, right? And get the Rogan bucks and the Rogan multiverse. This was before, I remember watching, what was it that I was watching? Tim Pool. And he was he wasn't doing the anti-trans shit that he's doing now. Like, that wasn't even it was when before Graham lost his mind and like a bunch of people just started, their brains started to melt. And yeah, I don't pay attention. She's just a high school bully, you know. It's just like, okay, they just go where the cash is. And once you see that they're just going where the audience is, and the audience is it's like a feedback loop, you know, she's just a bully. So I just ignore it. But anyway, anyway, that's a whole side thing. But yes, so there is that, you know, you're watching these, but what I've been spent the last few years trying to do is work against the algorithmic stuff, which pulls people into their vortex. So it just pulls. It's like just keeps, you know, it just sucks them in. So that was part of my goal, was to not walk away, but to sit there and say, no, you can stay on. Because I saw, okay, I wasn't planning to talk about this. So you saw Megan Murphy, who was a socialist radical feminist, start drifting into the I left the left narrative. Okay. So this is before, you know, Bridget Phetasy got on the grift, before everyone got on the grift. This was very early. It was a feminist socialist analysis that still has some sound stuff to it. Okay. But then you started to see Megan Murphy start to talk to these IDW types and talk about how she'd left the left, right? And so she was being caught into this whole, the Kerry Smith vortex, the walk away movement. And I interviewed some of them. They're not, that stuff's not on my channel, but people can watch it. I'm going to make it available to patrons. And it's not because I've got anything to hide. It's just because I don't want that. It's just, again, you know, I don't need brand yourself to determine what's good and not good optics. I have interviews with a whole bunch, with all of these people, where it was in good faith and I was curious and all that sort of stuff, right? And I've seen the drift. But then I started to see the left. And then you go, well, that's what are you talking about? Why would you leave the left over this? The left, this is a valid left-wing position. Why don't you show up to a meeting and fight for that position and have the argument? Why are you going to the right? And why are you talking to those? Like, why are you talking to them? And then you just sort of saw that get co-opted over the years. So anyway, but what my main area was always around that radicalization funnel and the nudges and the audience capture and the AI that's working in the background. So I was just like, oh, that's weird. That's an anomaly. I'm going to go in and I'm going to observe that. I'm going to measure that. It seems like there's something there. I didn't really think that it would go this long. I get annoyed that I keep being dragged into it, right? And it was just like, what is this thing? Like, obviously, you know, I know, I would talk about the internet. I know about Gamergate. I know the history and stuff. But then I started to see people sort of dragging Gamergate back up. And, you know, and again, like there were good actors on both sides with Gamergate, and it was like people are just missing this overall internet religious war that is between forums or communities or anything like that, and they became more and more toxic, and it became, you know, people were just deliberately like ignoring the internet aspect. They were kept dragging it back to the political level. They were talking about political concepts, when a lot of this stuff is nothing to do with the actual policy. It impacts policy, yeah, but it affects people's vote, yes. But they were straw manning this as the left versus the right, when it was Tumblr versus 4chan, or it was, you know, it was like Coke versus Sprite. It was nothing to do with left versus right. And if you're thinking in terms of left versus right, your politics is juvenile to begin with, because the left disagrees on pretty much fucking everything. And that was my red flag. It's like, you've never been to a meeting in your life. You've never been to a meeting in your life, because if you had, you would know that every political party has factions and sub-factions and branches, and that's just not how politics works. So again, I just saw the far right start to sort of co-opt this and run with this sort of anti-woke narrative from people who had left the left and who were just sort of spinning this narrative that was just false. It wasn't true. And you'd be put in, you've seen this over the years when you get people landing in my streams. Hi, Stephen. Hello. You see people landing where they're just arguing talking points, and they just say something and it takes days but there's no point like even debunking it, because then they go, oh, well, everyone's entitled to their opinion, and they just keep doing what they're doing anyway. They weren't listening. And I'm like, well, you do know that this is bots, right? And this is just astroturfing, and it's not the left. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But I just watched that over and over again. Just people just disappear and take the money and take the cash and disappear. And I just stayed put. Kept getting mass reported by all of their fucking troll armies, and here I am. So, I mean, that was why I got involved in all of this stuff to begin with, because it was always in good faith. Again, do I regret some of the shit? Yes. I made some terrible jokes, punched down. No one's, like, I wish I'd handled it with more restraint and more, in retrospect, like, I fight two parts of myself, which is kind of the smart ass person who's like, fast with a joke. But there is that other part of me that is reasonable, fair, considered, compassionate, all those things. I'm not a cunt, right? But I am good at joke writing, so sometimes those jokes won't land. And I feel bad about the way that I conducted myself, and I'll own that, right? Because you get, like, that's the thing about the turf wars, is that they're fucking insane, and you find yourself doubling down. Okay. Anyway, and then, but the way that this stuff goes is that I just saw through it. And so I was like, well, do I walk away, or do I try to save as many people as I can and try to persuade as many people as I can? And I decided on the latter, to go, okay, well, do what you can do with your little audience. And now, unfortunately, that meant wasting a lot of time on Twitter. But it wasn't even a matter of compassion, Simon, as much as that is true. It wasn't even a matter of compassion. It was just the fact that they're just false. Like, what they're saying is, like, there was that, here we go. I know that this is a digression, but that's the spilling the tea thing. We kind of go in a direction. Yeah. It's not like I haven't been approached and offered money and to run for office and all of those things by right-wingers. It's not like I haven't had the same phone calls. I just won't do that stuff. And this is why I have, 5 people watching, or whatever it is, 5 or 6 people watching versus, the army of lunatics and sitting on Rogan talking about how the left has gone mad. Okay, so you are an idiot. And that was disappointing, watching that happen. Watching that drift has been very disappointing, because I did, initially make introductions in good faith. I introduced Kelly J to the trigonometry. I didn't introduce her. But I introduced Megan and Graham and a few other people to the trigonometry guys, who, of course, are now running with this, like, fascist fucking bollocks in the US, right? That's why I know what they're doing. I see what they're doing. And his only goal was to get on Joe Rogan and build an audience, and he will say whatever it takes to do that. He has no fucking ethics or integrity or anything. And I know that because I've talked to him, because I did their website. And his goal was, I want to be like Dave Rubin. Those words are what he said. Okay. Now, so, and it wasn't about politics. I'll tell you that now. Yes, he wanted his brand and his positioning and everything was Dave Rubin is my hero. Okay. And I also did a 3-hour phone call, because he had already booked Kelly J for the first, that episode for where she blew up, right? And they blew up. Okay. So they'd already booked her for that. And they were actually like on the, she's hateful. And I said, okay, give her a shot. And then I actually spent 2 hours explaining to them the theory, the gap. Okay, so the fact that they pretend to not know the Radfem argument at any time is false, because I know I'm the person who sat down and spent 2 hours explaining the difference in the cleavage and what this was actually about. Yeah, and I actually was, I sat and I explained that to them, and I spent a lot of time explaining it. And basically, when that episode aired, and because they opened the title of their podcast with Trans Women Are Men, back to AI, the algorithm picked that up, obviously, and took the video down. He had a press release ready for when it was taken down. And it was algorithmic. It was back up within 6 hours, but he then did a bunch of media where he lied to his audience and basically said he'd been, because he asked me, he said, what the fuck's happened? And I said, well, it's probably just an auto takedown, appeal it. And it was fine. YouTube were like, okay, and put it back up. But he did this whole, spectacle, like with the media, getting the US, like all of these people whipped into a frenzy, the IDW types and all that whipped into a frenzy, saying that YouTube and big tech were censoring him and he'd been taken down and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it was automated and it was back up within hours. But he actually didn't put it back up until after he'd done the news cycle. And I saw him directly lie and misrepresent and lie about tech. And I was like, no, that's not what happened. You're lying. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to work with you anymore. And I was like, you're not an ethical person. You're not a good faith person. And then obviously I watched him just step on everyone until he got on Rogan. And now he's aligned with Ackman and he's gotten exactly what he wants, which is that, right? And yeah, it is very cynical. And he is I've got this information, and again, he's propped up by these bots, and those same bots and those things obviously targets people like me. Like, so basically, I know I'm out, but this is how these algorithms are manipulated, which is that they've all been weaponized against me because I just tell the truth, right? So anyway, that's how I got caught up in it all, which was like, I just saw all of the fake, and everyone that I talked to when I was interviewing them, I would always raise astroturfing. I'd always raise it, and I'd go, you do know that a lot of this is bots. And a lot of those likes on these trans activist accounts and stuff are fake. You do know that a lot of yours are fake. And they would just go silent and they would clench their assholes. And I'd say, And I said, well, no, like, this isn't real politics. This is Twitter. This is platform manipulation. And they'd fucking, like, every time. So I think Benjamin Boyce asked me on and never published it because I mentioned the digital angle. I talked Helen Pluckrose. That interview was a lead balloon in general, so I didn't. Interviewed Constantine, and they never had me on, even though we were supposed to. That was part of our deal for me giving them a cheap website, was for, to sort of do that. He never acknowledged that I actually had a degree in politics. He would treat me like I was some sort of idiot, like logo maker and stuff. But yeah, so anyway, so he always just like would talk to me like I was an idiot and didn't know anything about politics. It's like, I know more about you, more than you, mate. I got a degree in it. Where's yours? But then, you obviously saw him just saying the line to get the book deal and all that stuff. He's just a lot. Anyway, he's full of shit. Such a pseudo-intellectual. But anyway, I'm not going to make it like that because, like, who gives a fuck? I don't want to, like, I just hate them. I think they're fucking idiots. They're not worth my time. But I just want to explain how, like, how the role that AI played in a lot of this stuff. And my role was, I always was like, this is unethical. And I walked away. If I saw that people were doing sort of unethical practices, whether it was as an influencer, a content creator, a YouTube or product design or anything like that, I was like, well, no, I'm sorry, but that's unethical. And it was very weird when like every time you raised like platform manipulation with these guys, they would just get uncomfortable. And it's like, again, you just got to go into their accounts and you know that they've just inflated their follow account. They're buying likes. They're doing all of those things, right? As everyone in the culture wars is just astroturfed, right? The Daily Wire has their own troll farm. Okay. So anyway, what is the tipping point that actually can't answer that question. So there is research around what makes things viral, and it's not actually like you can't. I know, and I also know this because in 2011 I was one of the first people to really go and cut through from Twitter to a viral media, right? And research over the years has shown that it isn't. You actually don't really go viral online until there is a mainstream media publication that picks it up and reports on it. Then it becomes a viral thing. So, I'm not going to talk about any of those particular cases, but usually our friend that I just talked about and his press release, that's how he obviously knows that playing the media, pretending that there is a tweet. Like he actually, again, acting like I don't know what I'm talking about when I did what he did in 2011. It's like, I beat you to this. I've actually consulted on this model and got paid for it in an ethical way, of course, for 10 years before you showed up, mate. Fucking hell. I see right through what you're doing. But basically getting a mainstream media publication to report on it is what pushes it and makes things like viral. And so when I did The main concern when I went viral was that the media in Australia picked it up, media in Europe picked it up, Gizmodo picked it up, and a few, like Redmond Pie and Cult of Mac and those sorts of things. But there was that feeling of dread that again, it was a very weird feeling, watching and hoping that like cable news in the US wouldn't pick it up. Thankfully, they didn't. Thankfully, like it had burnt out by then, but like it was, so I've done that, but it didn't hit the US, thankfully. And in 2011, these things were somewhat more contained. Okay, so like you can go viral and that be forgotten the next day, right? It was just like you get to play that news cycle. Okay, so that's what happened. But to answer that question, so the tipping point that propels a grift into the wider world is the role that someone like Joe Rogan plays, which is he's mainstream, right? He would count in the as a media outlet who is pushing things out into the broader audience. So things don't just go viral on Twitter and Facebook and the internet on their own in their own right. How they go viral, and that's a very broad word, but like Coney 2012 or something like that, right? How those go viral is that it's usually mainstream media that reports on it, and then the mainstream media. So like the way that they're structured. So in Australia, for example, it's networks, right? So Fox Network, obviously, so you get it in the Financial Times. The Financial Times will then run it on the affiliated channels. Okay, so Sky News will run what's in the Financial Times, and they'll decide. So they decide what goes viral. In mine, it's still very much analog, and also it is very much, it comes back to media concentration, right? So in Australia, you've got three main networks. You've got your Murdoch network, you've got your Oz Stereo network, and you've got your Fairfax, and then you've got the ABC. Okay, so I went viral in the Oz Stereo bubble. So that was the West Australian newspaper. So I had a good relationship with them because had written for them, and I was like, featured in their thing about talking about Twitter and social media, and sort of that early social media stuff. And so I wrote the joke, and then like one of the journos there ran with it, and it was a funny joke and blah, but then that got picked up by the affiliate newspapers around the country, and then through the radio stations, and then the radio stations were part of the Seven network, and then so you go viral in one sort of vertical, right, within not vertical, the industry vertical. So you've got discrete like silos, right? So I didn't hit the Murdoch press, I hit the Oz Stereo 7 network. Does that make sense? So in the US, you'd say, okay, well, I hit the Fox network or the NBC one. You've got these distinct, Condé Nast networks. They've got those sort of discrete things. So if you pay attention, they're pushing narratives. So if you fit that, so that's how Fox really started to figure out the internet, which is that they could just launder their bullshit through their publications. So like the Daily Mail launder it, and Sky News pick it up. Okay, they practice it in Sky News Australia and see what the audience does and see what the reaction is. And then they kind of launder it up. Okay, so then they sort of hit cable news, and then they'll sort of reference each other, and then they'll say that it's a viral sensation, but they're the ones that actually made it viral. And when you actually look at what tweet they're referencing or the post, you'll see that there wasn't a lot of traffic. But what they've done is they've picked up that original tweet and they've run it in like an analog publication like the Daily Mail, or one of their smaller Daily Mail's big, but one of their smaller ones. A lot of them start in Australia, and they kind of India Times is used a lot at the moment, like for sort of these types of stories, and then they'll push it through to the lower level sort of local networks, and they'll know that they'll say that's gone viral, and they'll cite the newspapers, and then there's a book called Network Propaganda, and they actually talk about this, the research, they've actually done this, and they talk about it. But this is something that I knew, I went through and I did, and I perfected like very early on, right? So then that gets laundered up the chain to eventually you find yourself on Tucker Carlson saying this, and then saying that the Eminem story is the biggest story, and it's like, and then they say, oh, it's in cable news, and it's like, there was no real grassroots story, you decided that it was going to be a story and you just found the tweets to fit it and then made it viral. So it becomes that sort of self-fulfilling loop. So if you can learn how to like manipulate that, which people have, and have no ethics, then obviously you can see how that just becomes a factory and a media war that is wholly detached from reality. And wholly detached from reality, and not even related to anything political. Like there's no policy discussion, and that's I think that was the thing where it's like there was a narrative being pushed where they weren't willing to understand like why this happened, reasons and stuff. And there are a few red flags there, like there was a trans woman on a cervical cancer website, but they were representing it as though they had made the trans woman the face of cervical cancer when it really was actually just a page within the website that was clearly, if you understand anything about SEO, like search engine optimization, there will be trans women who are worried about cancer screening and looking for resources. And if you actually zoomed out and looked at the actual copy on the website, they were actually saying they were acknowledging the biological reality, but they were making sure that they were getting found as a resource for trans women who, they needed to have cancer screens and didn't know where to go. But the way that again, be very skeptical of screenshots, okay, especially at the moment, because screenshots misrepresent the source, they misrepresent the context of everything. And if you know anything about like search engine optimization, especially from like a government department, when it's a government department website, they're going to want to catch as many citizens as possible. And it was clearly just long tail, right? It was long tail stuff where in the case of, trans women being confused, again, remember most, literacy is low in many areas. Like people, people are just Googling, right? And they need access to information. So you got to make sure that you capture them when they, need information, which was referring them to their surgeon, right? Anyway, so I did that and I got caught. So I got caught sharing that rage bait. But then I was like, oh, no, check this. And that I got caught with that. And that was a moment for me to reflect. And I've checked ever since, right? And that was when I started to be suspicious, because then I started to say, hey, here's the context. And they'd go, no, it's not. And they just ignore it. And then they turned on me and started mass reporting me. So I was a fairly influential, viral-ish account up until I got involved in this stuff. And as long as I was saying the right things and going along with it, and I was a useful idiot just retweeting things right from the far right without even realizing it, because again, it was laundered through like mainstream, it was laundered through the media, right? It was laundered through these things. And a lot of I didn't realize just how fake a lot of the stuff was, but that made me pause. And I kind of went, oh, shit, okay, that's not me. Normally I check stuff. Why are they, what the fuck? How dare you do that to me? This is embarrassing. And so I made a commitment to like making sure I checked the context all the time. And then what I watched was a lot of anonymous TERF accounts claiming that they're anonymous because they have to be and they're scared. And I was like, no, you don't. You just need to behave yourself. But they was just sort of, again, astroturfing. I watched troll farms pick it up. And then I just started being mass reported by all of them. So obviously my account, like I have been paying, this is part of the reason why my Twitter account's gone and dead. I get no more than 100 views. And that's with Premium Plus. Like no, and you've seen the dumb shit that gets, I've tested like a joke, I've tested media, I've tested images, I've tested everything. You cannot escape out of that. Whatever they've done to my account, it is fucked, and I can't get out of it. Okay, so I'm in algo jail, and I can't get out. I was hoping that the change of management that they might fix it, but he's actually just monetized that. He's basically made it so that you have to just pay for that. And now the people who are mass reporting have blue checks, and they can't be reported. So it works really great. Well done, fuckhead, ruining a great platform. So anyway, but again, I've always had a peripheral interest in AI, but I never really looked into it. Okay. And so it's always been about the ethics of tech for me. Like, it's like, well, we got away from this. This was not the deal. This was not what we were promised. I was a good actor, and I, go in and people tell me that there's this data, and I was like, no, users don't behave that way. like with Gamergate, like I was around that and I was observing. I didn't participate, but I observed it, and I was like, well, what they're saying isn't true. I don't think that doesn't match up with what I know about internet behavior and user behavior. So I went in and I looked and I was like, oh, okay, so Gamergate's being used as cover to just wholesale, just go to war with like 4chan, for example. Okay, so Gamergate was being used to take down 4chan. Donald Trump, yes, while there's a grain of truth there with Donald Trump, you know, the way he got elected, that was sort of providing cover to get rid of a lot of other stuff. And it was sort of, again, that sort of information laundering, right? Again, the stuff that the IDW would acknowledge, but they would cherry pick. Right, so the idea that, because they would just ignore the fact that media ownership, they would ignore capitalism, they would ignore the incentives of big tech, and what they would do is just run off into conspiracy theories and start presenting their own narrative that conveniently aligned with the far right in America. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, my whole worldview is completely incompatible with those fucktards. I'm not helping them. No. They're the enemy. And also, it's not that, which is that I gave them a shot. They're like, oh, you haven't just heard the conservative arguments. Yeah, I've talked to all of them, and they're fascists. Sorry. You know, if you want, it's like, oh, you're just not being charitable enough. No, I did. I tried. I've got video of it, of me trying to listen, that I had maybe not been fair to the right. Maybe I'd been unfair to these people. No, not at all. Okay. I finally cracked. I was friends with Bridget Fedesi for a while, but I finally cracked it with her over Israel, where I was like, for fuck's sake, it's been 5 years. Look something up. Read something that isn't like these outside. It's like fucking hell. And I just had enough. She said something and it was clearly just clickbait, and it was just a poorly formed opinion. And I was just like, all right, I'm done. Okay, it's not, and again, the whole self-affirming, that sort of self-perpetuating thing is that she'll think that I just finally lost my mind and unfriended her over her innocent opinion. I was like, no, this is a pattern of behavior that I've noticed where you're just doing it for clicks, and you're just doing it because you're sucking up to Joe Rogan. And it's like, I don't fucking care about Joe Rogan. Fuck Joe Rogan. Have you seen him? He's gone off the fucking deep end. No, I have principles. And it's like, anyway, so, but the thing is that I know I was going to talk about AI, but that's a big part of how I arrived here, because I started over here with algorithms and arbitrary sort of, you know, taking down of things and reputation, you know, social scores and stuff for fairly benign things. And it seems, it's like, well, no, because with the culture wars, what I saw was really ugly shit. You know, you can say some pretty hateful things without swearing. You can say some very evil things and incite violence without having ever said a swear word, okay? And, you know, like the interactions with certain really nasty sort of anti-TERF accounts, right, that were threatening violence against women, they were saying they know how to get around it, right? So they were just, it was like, well, my objection to a lot of that was that you can't just police the language, because they're clearly subverting the algorithm. And people, the thing that I had, which was that I'd spent 10 years branding myself with the word cunt because it was funny and I swear a lot. And I had been given a shittier reputation score because I swear, versus the people who are actually like organizing to, you know, be violent and stuff. And it was like, well, this doesn't seem fair. So I raised my hand and I went, guys, tech, this isn't like the way you run. You can't run, like, there's too many, like, too much collateral damage with the way that you're doing this. They know how to get around stuff. Platform manipulators manipulate these things, and innocent people are the ones that get punished and banned and stuff, right? And it's only the idiots who go in and just say what they think that are being punished, and the ones who are actually doing the manipulating behind the scenes and actually, you know, mass reporting you. I've talked about this 100 times, where like I had mass reporting on my account for, God, ages, and AI and stuff, right? But you'd have AI bots that would try to goad me into telling them to fuck off, and then they'd report the reply. See this on LinkedIn. I had this actually happen this week, where some guy came in and started stuff. I called him a dickhead, and then I get pinged for harassment, right? Because I said dickhead. So they goad you, and then they, and again, that's something that my ex-husband used to do. I'm not putting up with that shit. So I appeal. You get what I'm saying? So they try to get you and goad you. So it's a multifaceted thing where they're constantly reporting your account, constantly trying to goad you to a point where you say, fuck off, cunt, bang, and then your account's gone, right? That's a if you think that's not happening, I've got a bridge to sell you, right? But that's why you'll find yourself on your last legs with something like @RealDonaldTrump send nudes. That got me a 7-day ban, right? And I hadn't done anything that was funny, right? It was like nothing. It wasn't even swearing. But because they've got these manipulators working in the background and constantly reporting you, you're just going to trip up. Eventually you trip up, eventually. And that tripwire is fine if it's just Twitter. But what if that tripwire is sitting there in like recruitment AI that is reading your CV for like certain keywords? And this comes back to what I was planning to talk about, which was that I've always had a passing interest in AI, but not really anything that is I wouldn't consider myself a subject matter expert in AI at all. Like, it's very dry, it's very boring, and I think a lot of the reason why people aren't more concerned about it because it is dry and boring. It's much like politics or the culture wars or platform manipulation or anything to do with politics and tech together, particularly. Both of those topics are very boring, okay? I try to make it a little more entertaining and a little more interesting, but even I struggle. Even I have trouble getting people to engage, even when I'm sort of speaking at the level I'm speaking. Well, I still get people to go, what does that mean? What's that mean? What's that mean? It's like, fucking hell. Oh my God, I can't make it any simpler. So, because, so we're dealing with that. So, but the thing about AI is that it's running like, I started to look into it. So again, I was like, well, I'm broadly optimistic about the tech. The tech looks good. Okay. I think the applications are going to be great. But then, because my business started just, being grassroots. So supporting artists and musicians. And I still maintain that this is the way forward, which is that you don't need corporations to make money on the internet. You can go direct. Okay. Corporations have a lot to say about that. But in theory, this is the true fans principle, which is if you're a musician and you want to be a professional musician, and you could be a writer or painter or anything like that. If you build an audience of 1,000 true fans who will buy and buy anything that you make and evangelize your stuff and share and all that sort of stuff. If you build fans, true fans, you can build a living, right? You can build a very good living, and you can do what you love for the rest of your life. Okay, that was the premise of like my whole business, right? I'm passionate about that. I still am, and so that's why I cared about the platform manipulation and stuff, because I was like, well, that's why I intervened with Megan Murphy, because she was a journalist. She had her income stream cut off, and Twitter's algorithms had cut her off from her true fans, right? And that was her. And I was like, well, yeah, it's, oh my God, it's so bad. So anyway, so yeah, I mean, I got to remember why I kind of got interested in this, because these things have a way of sort of consuming all of your time and sucking you in to like getting distracted from your actual mission and your actual work. And for me, it was like, no, the internet's gotten off track. These platforms are manipulated, and ordinary people, content creators, fans, they're putting gatekeepers and layers and layers and layers of control and barriers between artists and their fans. Like, that's not what the deal was. The deal was that Twitter was a way for celebrities to talk to their fans and vice versa, and that was the exchange. That was the value proposition of Twitter, which was to connect and share, talk to fans, right? Especially with the celebrities that I got on sort of early on was musicians. It was a tool for them to connect directly and banter and back and forth with fans without necessarily. So for me, it was about like trying to get them to talk about, like, go on their forums was always a pain in the ass, right? But they were more likely to, they were a lot more likely to just, you have their, BlackBerry at the time, but, as you're traveling, when you're doing a picture of a donut and, this was before Twitter even supported images. Remember that? But they could just SMS or have a thought or share their things with their fans via Twitter, right? Twitter became kind of a way to, connect with fans in a way that was not me having to chase them so they'd post on their forum or write a newsletter or write to their fans. You could just have them tweet. That was the value proposition from the get-go for me, right? So that fans felt like you're building that connection. And so obviously we kept getting away from that as people started to go, well, no. Advertisers were like, no, that won't fly. We want to be able to use those celebrities and their clicks to get our cut. And it's like, well, we don't need you. We actually don't need you because we can go direct. And the advertising agencies were like, no, what we'll do is we will get influencers. So we'll start to, you see how this stuff started to feed on itself, and we got away from that. And then obviously the platform manipulations and all of this astroturfing and all of that other stuff, that's where it just obviously escalated and culminated in the election of Donald Trump. And then everything that's happened after that, right? Justifying surveillance, basically everyone getting between people and their audience, me and my audience, right? That's, you can see how that it got taken over, gentrified, right? So it got all off mission. And so AI is just another extension of that at the moment, because what happened last week, right, was that there's been all of this, 2 weeks ago, over the Christmas break, whatever it was, whatever day it was, who cares? But what happened over the Christmas break was that I actually took some time because the OpenAI versus New York Times lawsuit. But then I started to look at more of the AI lawsuits. But then I also, because of what I do and my interest area around artists and, going direct and all that sort of stuff, and advocating for users, I started looking into what artists thought, because obviously Sarah Silverman was suing them as well. You've got authors who are suing, you've got artists, and there was this big sort of blow up over Midjourney and copyright claims, right? The stuff that we've talked about. And basically my thing is, well, if the artists don't consent to it, then you pay them. I'm sorry, but you've got to pay licensing, right? And I saw them actually sort of misrepresenting the piracy argument and ignoring the fact that the argument for piracy of music was very different to what they were selling, which was I'm pro piracy of music in the sense that the labels take so much away from artists that's actually probably going to make more money if you remain unsigned and go direct. And just learn some skills, learn how to create your own stuff, and go direct and build an online community for yourself, and hustle via MySpace or whatever, and be okay with piracy, and get that, and even put it up there on your own, and do that, because people will buy your merch if they're fans. Your goal is to find your fans. They'll buy your merch, they'll buy your tickets, they'll tell other people about you, they'll share your music, and they'll become fans. And that's the premise for piracy being justified. It wasn't just about OpenAI are co-opting the MPAA and RIAA talking points around piracy, which was that it was the users that were stealing from the artists. In this case, this is corporations stealing from everybody, and the corporations are wholesale doing theft everywhere and compensating no one. It's got nothing to do with the piracy argument. This isn't a Napster versus Metallica versus users argument. They are morally different, and they come from different arguments, and it's a distraction. So I saw that and I was like, hang on. All right, here we go again with tech bros. What are they rewriting, and what are we missing? What am I missing here? And so I started to get into the copyright thing. And what I saw was it just started to get worse and worse and worse. Okay. So basically I started to go, all right, well, okay, I hadn't thought of the copyright stuff. So let's look into the dark side of AI. Okay. What's the criticism? Because again, you had that whole war with the accelerationists and the safetyists. You had all of that stuff happen, right? Around the time that Sam Altman was ousted and put back in, all that stuff. I talked about that. And, but you had that whole thing going on, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? All right, let's look into this. Let's go and look at the research. So AI at the moment, so LLMs, wholesale theft of artist stuff. So I've got here's a list of the problems that AI right now has as it stands, and I have an ethical problem with the laws as they stand because these are big problems. Okay, 1, copyright theft. Okay, so their argument that the training, it's just training, bro. It's just training. It's ours. It's ours. Just because if you put it on the internet, it's ours. It's like, well, that's not how it works. You can't just go up and you can't pick wildflowers, right? Well, that's a bad example, but you know what I'm saying. Even mining companies pay royalties back into the community. They pay taxes. They pay these things. Yeah. Anyway, so there's that. There's the privacy angle. Okay, so especially around not just around data breaches, but the use of bossware. So there's a term called bossware, where you've got these shitty tools that are micromanaging and automating the micromanaging. Sort of, it's that Taylorism, right? Taylorism is a scientific management, right? Where basically every decision that is made, Amazon has this from the bottom up, right? Which is everything is data driven. There is no humanity in it. It is all about meeting targets and optimizing and using AI to predict your behavior and punishing you and all that sort of stuff. So at Amazon, obviously in the warehouses, you've got the PEJAR stuff. You've got people being fired like via email. You've got the fact that warehouse, like the drivers for Amazon are like the most surveilled, like probably one of the most heavily surveilled jobs that you can think of because they use eyeball tracking in the car. They will, they just every part, everything. Like it is just, it's horrific. Okay, so they're tracking every move if you don't meet those targets, and then they'll just fire you on the spot if you're late, if you take a pee break. But that's actually also infected remote work as well. So Office 365 is like basically the enterprise grade Office 365 has lots of bossware in it. So it's key logging, it is checking emails, it is monitoring everything, it is tracking all of your whether all of your activity on your computer. So if you have a work computer, they've installed like basically malware that is tracking every thought, everything you say, sometimes your eyeballs and eye movements, every call you make, and also you've got, that, right? So AI is driving a lot of that stuff. Okay. Then you've got truck drivers, for example. Yeah. So you've got truck drivers so this is one of those things where I talked about the mouse jiggles. This is where capitalism is funny, because then someone creates a product called a mouse jiggler, right, that is designed to move like a mouse so you can go have a toilet break or go to lunch or whatever, right? So it tricks the keylogger into thinking that you're fucking, but Office 3, it depends. Like, so Office 365, I think it's the enterprise grade stuff. I think your individual thing. Again, it's like one of those things where it's like I'm not doing anything wrong, so it doesn't really matter. But if you're working for enterprise and it's an enterprise thing, just assume that you're being monitored, right? And I heard another thing about when your call is recorded, right? So when your call is recorded, when you're talking, most people would think that they're recording when they pick up that phone. Okay, well, yeah, I know. But I do. There is something magical about capitalism. There's sort of this is the invisible hand that Adam Smith sort of refers to, is that it does have that somewhat balancing effect where you create that problem, and capitalism will find the market will find a solution for it, right? Which I think is fucking hilarious. But the problem is that what happens is that over time, and this was Marx's quibbles with Smith, which was that over time, you're going to need to be more and more draconian to compensate. So eventually, so what was the thing? So that was where, here we go, there's a good example. Being accused of using AI, right, for uni. So if you're at university and you get accused of using ChatGPT, your only real recourse is to show your work and track your work. and show your changes, track your changes, or agree to surveillance. Right. So, so when I was at one university, when I was doing psychology, you had a whole browser that would track and put malware around your whole computer to check that you weren't like Googling stuff or checking stuff. It would lock you out of everything, and you'd have to film. And what you'd have to do is film your whole desk and everything, and keep the webcam on. It would film your face and your micro expressions and everything when you were doing an exam. And so, so there's one, it's like, well, okay, so everyone suffers and has to do that because of like, so yeah, it's a race to the bottom is basically that then you end up having to put in more and more increasingly draconian measures to correct for the people that are trying to get around the things. And it just becomes a sort of a spiral, right? And they don't do that at my university, thankfully. It's why I left. I left Monash for that reason, because I've got ADHD. I could not deal. It would cause me so much anxiety that I would just choke the test, right? It wasn't because, and again, they go, well, if you've got nothing to worry about, you wouldn't be so anxious. And it's like, that is not the point. I oppose that. No, I do not accept that. And there is no real room for you to say, I do not accept that. That was not, no, I've got rights. No. Fuck off. I don't need your degree if you want that fucking that badly. So anyway, I'm paying you. You do not do this. But so they wanted you to film your whole environment and everything, right? So anyway, and you give them your driver's license. You show them your ID. That was what you had to do to study psychology at Monash. And that was another reason why I withdrew, because it's not okay. So that was like something. It's like, where's that data going? Oh, we don't know. We just use the tool. Well, why don't you know? Why? What the fuck? And people have gotten very complacent about where it goes and how it's used in the background. But, you know, you've got all these AI tools that are now like using predictive stuff. So AI can basically, based on your previous day, predict your like habits and things, and predictively and preemptively, pre-crime shit, right? So they, over time, they can track your toilet breaks. It's like, well, that's a breach of privacy. It's like, anyway, so that's one example. Anyway, but then, so there's the workplace aspect of that. So there is the, you know, the spying and the spyware and the AI and bossware. So look up bossware, okay? So truck drivers, for example, for insurance purposes, okay, my uncle is a truck driver, a long-haul truck driver. And I can kind of understand it here, because he actually is for petrol. So it is actually like petroleum, right? So that he's transporting. So I can understand and again, this is how they sell it, right? This is how you can't, the problem is that they do have value. It's not, you can't reject it out of hand, because some of these things do actually have utility to them. So in the case of like fatigue tracking, so they're tracking fatigue, and driving. So obviously for him to crash, right? So if he was to crash, that would be a disaster, because it's petrol, right? So they want to avoid that. And driver fatigue is a big problem. So the insurance company wants them to use this software, okay, to track fatigue. But what the company wants to do is maximize profit. So what the company wants to do is track you, put you under surveillance. So he's in a position now where, and he was telling me about this, and he's just a fucking truck driver. He didn't give a fuck about it. He's just like, oh yeah, okay, I got it, you know. And he's like, yeah, I can't look at my phone. I'm not allowed to look down. I can't call my wife and talk on the phone. I can't do anything. I need to sit there and just do this the whole way, because otherwise I get I get told off and performance managed and like all that sort of stuff. In America, they actually dock your pay and various other things. You can't do that here, but they dock your pay and various other things based on these eyeball tracking technologies, right? And that's run by AI. And I was like, fucking hell, okay. I think maybe before you hype bros start talking about AI, we need to have a conversation about the law. Okay. So there's the workplace stuff. So there's the bossware. Here's another one, water use. This is the one I got today. Apparently, so data centers and water use. So they're actually contributing an awful lot to, so the environmental, actually, look, I'll keep going with the AI ethics. So you've got the copyright theft, you've got the workers' stuff, surveillance, right, privacy. This eyeball tracking thing, just one example, right? The mouse jiggle, the Office 365, all that stuff. They want you fucking I'm not, no, I actually am thinking of cancelling all my subscriptions and just installing OpenOffice and stuff. Just, I'm actually starting to question my relationship with the cloud in general because of the nature of this stuff. And even to the point where I'm wondering whether, because I want to finish my book, I'm actually thinking that I'm only going to run short run print and because I don't think that you should put stuff online anymore. I just don't. I'm starting to feel like all of the privacy guys were right. Until there's laws that criminalize this stuff and they have penalties that are severe, again, you can't talk about these problems without also talking about capitalism and that we will always end up here. Okay. So the tracking report logs say Taya used the term Captain Fuckstick 47 times last week. Well, there you go. Elon Musk banned a whole bunch of journalists this week for the same thing. They're blaming the algorithm because somehow they just all happen to be critics of Israel and Elon Musk. I wonder who's running troll armies and bot farms. They can just go, well, it wasn't me. It was AI. Because Israel, the IDF's fucking troll farms just mass reported all these accounts, right? And Elon Musk, and they also happen to be critical of Elon Musk. So I imagine that's not an or, it's an and situation in the logic, which is, well, they're critics of Israel and they've been smack talking Elon Musk, ban him. Again, that's that false positive thing that I've been talking about, right? That's AI running that. Never touches a human. I've talked about, there's so many times I've talked about this, right? I can't even get a support ticket. I can't get anything fixed. You know why? Because the AI decided that I'm a terrorist. And I don't know why. I didn't do anything. But that's what the AI has decided. I think maybe it's been talking to Brand Yourself and doesn't like the fact that I made a joke about a penis in 2014. Sorry. Now I've got a social score, right? I'm in every recruiter. And if that's source data that has been learned, so because the big database in the sky, they all share that data, it becomes a big database, a massive database in the sky from Brand Yourself, where I said a joke about Xanax and Trump to, at Real Dun, and I've got these Twitter suspensions and these people are reporting me and these people, and you go, okay, well, what if it's learned? So the Brand Yourself has determined that I've got a social score of 0. And so they use Brand Yourself's API to determine that I'm a bad person and I'm automatically rejected and blackballed for every job I apply for within, because that's right. So the Brand Yourself software also sells an enterprise solution for recruiters. So basically they sell that reputation management data back to pre-screen candidates for bad reputation. But no recruiter, because recruiters are idiots and dumb and lazy, don't look up what the actual criteria are. So they just go, well, okay, you won't even, like at the moment with AI recruitment tools, like Amazon have them, everyone is running them, every recruiter, most people aren't getting out of the gate, okay, because there's something in their CV that's like a red flag. Famously, like I think it was 2020? 21, something like that, Amazon 22. Amazon were filtering out Union. So they had their in-house chat, so like a Slack, the internal tool, right? They had moderation where if you discussed union, use the word union or anything like that in your chat logs on anything with Amazon internally, you would be performance managed and pushed out and fired. Okay? You couldn't have a private conversation that mentioned the word union because they were spying and monitoring on everything that you were saying on these chat tools, right? And they were, they screen for various things in AI. You can't tell me that they're not discriminating against people for marital status and age and all of the illegal things that they're not allowed to screen for, but they hide behind the plausible deniability of it's just the system. Recruiters do that. The system. It's the system. It's the algorithm. Well, which algorithm? What criteria did you put? Why? Why didn't you check? These need question and scrutiny, right? That it's not, these things are designed by people and they're not just sentient magical things, right? They have biases. So yes, that leads into the AI bias of AI. Okay. And it's not like woke bias. If anything, it's like the opposite, which is that this is my beef with the anti-DEI people that, again, the far right have hijacked these concerns to turn it into this sort of horrific nightmare that they're doing right now with the DEI thing, where they're using anti-DEI arguments to whitewash over the failings of capitalism, right? So again, they're saying, like the Boeing example, right, with the plane that crashed, and which was actually just cost cutting. And they ignored safety stuff. They removed layers. It was negligence on their part, right? But Musk and that lot were basically like, well, it was because the, DEI, they had a shitty pilot, like that sort of bullshit, right? They're so retarded. I said retarded. I must be punished because they didn't, and they just say terrible, stupid shit without saying retarded. Well, woe is me. Anyway, so, but you're seeing like them sort of use that spin to just like gaslight everybody and pretend that it's not a failure of capitalism and cost cutting and, like using the Twitter. I have a different view now, as much as I had problems with the old Twitter, and I've got a problem with the, the cheerleader types, the popular kids running Twitter. He did actually use this anti-woke stuff as a cover to just lay off all of the staff that were preventing like disinformation. He was planning on obviously in retrospect, he was planning on monetizing platform manipulation and not actually fixing the real problem, right? Because they're just like, but anyway, that sort of, it's like right washing. So you got woke washing, but then now you've got anti-woke washing, which washes over the same problem, which is that corporations are using sort of woke language and the rainbow flag and all this sort of stuff to sort of conceal their own like abuse of labor in the global south, okay? Or like, like Nike, take a knee, but like using sweatshops or, all those sorts of things. But the right are using they're basically using the opposite stuff, which is to say that black people are incompetent, women are incompetent, and it's because DEI that all of these things have failed. It's like, well, no, if you actually looked, you go, well, no, they just cut corners on safety, which is what Elon Musk has done. And I'd be very concerned about, if I was him, I'd be looking at whether you like that SpaceX contract. I can't see, or Tesla. I'm not buying a Tesla if that's his worldview, that he can cut costs on safety. That means he cuts cost on safety everywhere, and I'm not buying that car. Also, it's a subscription, and I'm not paying for that shit. But I'm not like, not putting a subscription in my fucking car. Also, I don't have any money. Become a patron. I don't have money for a Tesla. Become a patron. You don't have to, but that's all right. I'm just saying. Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so AI. So that, so you got that problem. So AI is bias, which is that like I joke about on LinkedIn, there's this big thing about whether you should be sharing personal information on LinkedIn. I'm like, no, it's the most professional thing you could ever do, because HR can use it to discriminate illegally against you and put you in their database, and they can pretend they're not discriminating. It's like that is the most professional thing that you can do, is to talk about how many kids you've got, show your wedding. And you talk about your gay partner, okay? Because then they can use it to, like, they've got that information that they're not allowed to ask. But anyway, so they can use those things abusively, right? But then obviously you've got the environmental impact. So this is the one that is like, fuck me. So e-waste. So it turns out that emissions from the GPUs, like, and the pollution caused by the e-waste. So GPUs are like pieces of hardware, right? Data centers, computers, that's all comes with, silicon, plastic, metal, all those sorts of things. E-waste is a massive, massive problem. Like, so we're just starting to deal with plastic waste and just starting to deal, well, not even dealing, but slowly starting to deal with emissions. And AI, the data centers, GPUs, hardware, computer hardware, all of this sort of discarded stuff. They say it's recycled, but it's not. A lot of it is just ending up in landfill, and it is, responsible for. It's got a massive, massive footprint, and it's actually threatening to undo a lot of the hard work that we've done trying to sort of defossilize a lot of the the energy sector and stuff, right? So what progress that we've made in getting people on solar and, using fewer plastics and all of those sorts of getting, removing and reducing our dependence on fossil fuels, AI and, by proxy tech, right? Data centers and all of those sorts of things. And also, fast fashion, phones, discarded phones, discarded hardware, all of the things that go with, all that sort of stuff, especially with planned obsolescence in play now, where you may have noticed that if you buy a Mac now that would have lasted 6 years, it's now lasting 3 because it bricks. Pretty much your battery fucking dies or whatever because they've got it built in where they want you to buy another piece of hardware rather than fix it. That is causing massive amounts of environmental destruction now, okay? That's why this links to a lot of the right to repair laws as well, because you can't actually self-repair. Anyway, so that's a whole other thing. I'll do right to repair another time. But this is all linked. Like it is actually, it's sort of like, why? I just had this thing where I was like, fucking hell, I got to fight this thing now. And that's why I sort of became a lawyer and why I want to regulate, right? But you've got that planned obsolescence, but they're heading that way with cars that are a subscription that they can just turn off remotely and say, upgrade your car, buy a new one. And they'll make it like, I drive a Camry hybrid. Okay. I fucking love my car. I got a 2016 Camry hybrid. I don't drive much. So like my car, no need to upgrade. I mean, I don't have the money anyway, but like I have no real need to upgrade. It's still under 100,000 kilometers. I love my car. Okay. I love my Camry hybrid. However, the battery in the hybrid is something that once that goes, it is actually more expensive to fix the car than it is to replace the battery. And they do this, right? I think that that's getting better. I think that they're coming up with better technology to do that now. But that was a big problem with hybrids for a long time, especially the Toyotas, which is that the cost of the battery, like if that hybrid battery was to fail for whatever reason, and I think apparently you get about 10 years out of it. I'll probably get about 15 because I don't drive my car. It's still, very low Ks for its age. But there comes a point where it's more expensive to so you then end up with e-waste, a non-recyclable car that has to be pulled apart, and you can't. But you could have easily, if the battery was replaceable and easier to replace, or repairable, right, or rechargeable, or whatever, right, you were able to repair that you would get an extra 10 years out of that car, easy, right? Not that I would have my car for 20 years, but I'm getting to the point where this might actually end up being the case because every car now has a subscription attached, and I'm dying on that hill. I am not making my car and my ability to drive and stuff, and I'm not having what? Here we go. Here's another thing with AI, which is the fucking self-driving stuff and predictive stuff with insurance. Like, no one understands. Like, why would you buy a Tesla and not be fucking absolutely paranoid that your insurance company and if you had a crash and you were going 2Ks over the limit, that's being tracked and you're under surveillance. And it's like, no. Right? It's like, no, I'm not. I'm sorry, but what happens if you're I'm overdue on my car payment? Right now? I've got a final payment to do, and I fucking forgot. So I got to knock on the door. I got to pay it. I'm paying it but I'm saying, and then the car's paid off. Yeah, but that was because I forgot at Christmas and I had the last payment. But anyway, but what if they just decided to just lock that car? They could remotely. What if you were a day late on your payment and they locked the car? What if every landlord that you rent your house, right? Now, people haven't thought about these smart homes and the flip side to them, which is that tenants. What if they put smart locks on your house, and we had this problem with our landlord where they processed our rent late, right? Over 3, we always pay early, right? But they processed it so it was a day late. What if at midnight that night, okay? If they hadn't processed your payment, they could lock you out of your house or lock you in, which is a hazard. What if they could just remotely lock you into or out of your house if you were late on your rent, right? Yeah, everything as a service. Fucking thinking as a service. everyone's been doing thinking as a service for long enough. But, people haven't really thought this through. They want the shiny thing. They want and I hadn't really thought about it, even with Apple. Like, I love Apple products, and I think they're I think as tech goes, as evil as Apple is, as a company, they're less evil than, others. Okay. So they're kind of the less shitty and company. Like, Tim Cook has been on record repeatedly saying this stuff needs regulating, and he actually thinks that there should be data dividends, and that he talks about the data industrial complex and how that needs reining in, and all those sorts of things. So to their credit, Apple are a massive company. Okay. And that's another reason why I object to the fact that they've done this planned obsolescence thing, where your phone and your computer, after certain amount of time, just like stops functioning to the point where they create this maximum pain, so that you feel like you want to upgrade, right? Like, I went through that recently, whereas, it would be, so that's very much linked to Right to Repair. Lewis Rossman is a good channel to watch for that kind of stuff if you're interested in sort of planned obsolescence and right to repair and those sorts of things around tech. But so, you've got that stuff. What if AI decides that you are at risk of defaulting on your car payment? So preemptively, limits your use of the car. So what if you are a bit late on your car payment or your insurance? So if you're, let's say you forgot to pay your driver's, we've already got that problem now, which is you can't forget to pay your driver's license and go on the road. You'll be your camera. Like, you've got cameras everywhere now, okay? You can't risk driving without a license. You used to be able to get away. I'm not advocating for it, but I'm saying if you're in an accident and you were like a little bit late on your license, that could be used by insurance companies to pull out, not pay you, right? I'm thinking about the time when, like, my husband, right, my ex-husband was injured. He's a bus driver and he was injured, okay? And they had cameras, they had camera footage. And he actually like pulled the bus to avoid an accident, right? But the camera didn't capture the car fully and the car's movements. And all they saw was him, and he had a full massive injury. And the way that you had no protection. The insurance company just decided to put him under surveillance, challenge the injury, like evil shit. And he was a legit claim. Okay, so he actually saved someone's life. He was trained. He actually prevented a much more serious accident from occurring that could have hurt a lot of people, and he was punished. Okay, took them a year to pay, and they starved us out so severely that it destroyed our marriage. It was like the nail in the coffin for our marriage because we just couldn't do it. But what if they just decided that I'm just trying to think of an example there. What if he'd been going slightly 1K over the limit? They can just withdraw that. They did that fucking shit anyway, but what if that he wouldn't have gotten paid at all? Or the eyeball tracking. What if the eyeball tracking showed that he was distracted for 2 seconds because he was checking the environment or whatever? That car, he could have, here we go. What if AI had determined that he should have been looking there when he was looking there, and if not for him looking over there, that car, he would have been able, you get what I'm saying? Like, these are like, that's not okay, right? Yeah. So the smart device will snitch to the insurance company. What if you have a fire? Okay. And your smart devices are like monitoring and measuring all these things, and they make it so that can't tell me the insurance company won't use that shit to abuse you, right? So that's my ethical concern with AI. I already had that concern. That plus the environmental concern. That plus the fact that they're actually using a lot of global south labor to train the AI. Again, fucking sweatshops, as usual. All of those things. And it's like, okay. And also, like, we're already seeing all these layoffs. So you may have seen all the rounds of layoffs that are happening in tech at the moment. And there's a whole bunch of stuff coming down the pipe because AI, they're replacing people with AI, but AI is not good enough. So it's got nothing to do with whether AI is good or not. It's about the hype. And there's a whole bunch of like managers and middle like idiots and like CEOs and stuff that have bought into the hype, and they think that they can just replace people with AI. And that's going to, I mean, it's going to be funny because it's going to implode on itself, but people can get hurt, right? There's going to be people that actually get hurt from this stuff. Not to mention the catastrophic effect of, you know, mass unemployment that comes from it, but also, you know, people being, you know, restaurants measuring every waiter's fucking, you know, move, tips, everything just being monitored 24/7, and you can't even fucking flinch. Like, I don't want to live in that world. Okay. And so, but again, a lot of the concerns around AI, but then you've also got this whole algorithmic defamation thing, where what if an algorithm decides that you are X person and you're not, or they mistake you for someone else, or based on, or their predictive or their predictions are wrong, or false positive. So like content moderation on Twitter, being a false positive, being flagged as a bad actor and being unable to get support, well, fuck it, it's Twitter, who cares? But what about, what if someone is denied insurance cover? Right? They all, you know, based on that, or life insurance in particular. What if someone is denied cancer treatment because that stuff is missed? What if there's a misdiagnosis and someone is given the wrong treatment? What if, you know, like all of these things, right? There's so much risk involved because there's too many like people that are putting too much faith in this stuff, and it's not good. If you've used ChatGPT to try and do anything that you know something about, like a lot about, and like Simon said, AI music, right? AI, if you, it's not good. Okay, it's not good. If you know anything, even Midjourney, like it's fun, as impressive as it is, it's not professional quality. I won't use it. I mean, I use it on my thumbnails because it's easy and it's just a fucking thumbnail. But it's not production grade, but there are enough people who will think it is production quality, and that is the problem, right? The thing is that things like ASMR and background music, elevator music, that's going to be disruptive because usually, like, let's say you go into the supermarket, when you've got the radio playing or you've got, you know, elevator music or background music playing in public, those places are supposed, or the hairdresser, like they're playing like ambient music, right? Normally they pay a license to, in Australia it's the Record Industry Association, in America it's the RA. They pay a license for that, right, to be able to play that music. Or the radio pay a license to be able to play music catalogs, right? They pay a licensing fee. What you're going to see is corporate bosses up the chain decide that they can just generate AI hits. And people will just, because they've got the radio on during the day as background noise or whatever, they can just generate unlimited streams of bullshit music that you know, no one who cares about music or understands music will do. But you've got no chance of getting on the radio now because they've decided to just replace that shit with shitty, generic, cheap elevator music, whereas before, like that, at least like the labels and various other people would get paid, right? If I had to choose between the RIAA getting paid and no one, and AI, then I'd choose the RIAA because at least they are still, regardless of how exploitative it is, they're still paying something to the artist, right? Or creating like art, okay? And an independent artist cannot compete with that. Okay, you can if you go direct and build a community and all that stuff. There is going to be a market for, I mean, I've had my shit stolen and repurposed for as long as I've like been on the internet, right? And I've always had to compete with sort of Wix and shitty agencies, and you know, I've always had to compete with shitty copy, bad shit all throughout. It's like you'll always. You're not the thing. You can't be commodified in that way if you're good at what you do. If you've got a craft, you'll find a market. But if you've got an audience, if you've got an algorithm where the only way that you can promote yourself and the only way that you can sell anything is to, you know, play the algorithm game, and you are someone who doesn't comply and doesn't, you get what I'm saying? It all is just a spiral. It's a death spiral because even if you are a good artist, okay, even if you are an honest artist, well, let's say you're a musician, let's say you're Ben Folds, okay? Let's say you're Ben Folds and he swears in some of his songs. What if that trips up AI and they decide, well, no, Ben Folds is a bad actor, okay? And what we'll do is we'll replace him with elevator music, piano music. That would be funny. He'd probably find that funny. But I'm just saying, like, as an example, oh, well, but what if you're an indie artist who's trying to break through and you haven't got his resources, right? And what you want to do is promote yourself directly. Where do you go? Where do you promote yourself? Where do you go? You've got to go on Spotify, where you're at the mercy of Spotify's algorithm. You've got to go on YouTube, where you're at the mercy of YouTube's algorithm. You've got to go on Twitter, where you're at the mercy of Twitter's algorithm. You've got to go on Wix or Squarespace, because obviously you're not a web designer, you're a musician. So you've got to go on Wix and Squarespace. Wix is owned by, Wix is an Israel company, and Squarespace is in the United States. If you want to, or you could go on, say, Elementor or something like that, but that's also based in Israel. So if you've got an opinion on Israel, there's a chance that could be shut down. If all the plugins that you use for your website, if you build on WordPress or whatever, you could be taken down by your host because you've been made a target. And also, where do you promote yourself now? And again, I'm not saying that that's a plausible, I'm saying that would be an outlier, right? Most people aren't affected. But what if you see what happened this last couple of months, where suddenly you're an anti-Semite? Because you oppose Jennifer, because you oppose that. You talk about go up against Israel and you're fucking cactus. You have a website based on, I don't think Wix has actually done this. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there's always that worry. Wix is an Israel company. There's a lot of tech companies in Israel, okay? Because that was one of the gold rush countries for a while there in tech. But, they were trying to sort of, there's a sort of strong incubator and tech hub there, and there's a lot of big tech companies based out of Israel. But imagine if you're a musician and you are now fully dependent on the algorithms to promote yourself. You are fully dependent on other tech like Wix or other things, right? And all you've got to do is just not have an opinion on anything ever. And also, the opinion that you don't have, the opinion that is a normal opinion that was the fine opinion 5 minutes ago, that can change anytime. So, good luck to you. Women don't have penises. Well, that wasn't a controversial view 10 years ago. And then you start saying that, and then bye-bye everything. Bye-bye music career, bye-bye your ability to promote yourself on Twitter, bye-bye audience, bye-bye fucking your Amazon account, bye-bye PayPal, bye-bye Stripe, and oh gosh, also Wix is own, it's like, that's not a society. That's not how you run things. This is why we need laws around this stuff, and also around user rights and making sure that people have rights to appeal things. And that's been my thing. And that's why AI, it might look like I've done this sort of weird pivot, but AI runs all of this stuff. Okay. So AI, when I talk about AI, it's always because it works in the background. It's sort of peripheral to the core issue of policy and law and tech regulations. But it is now, the stakes are higher around it because unless you have recourse or the ability to request an audit or anything like that, or some sort of ombudsman or process where you can amend, you do have there is the again, you've seen what happened with Kiwi Farms and all of these other things where you put it all together. And you go, I have concerns about this. And it's not got nothing to do with any political issue. It's got nothing to do with any tribe, anything. It is about living in a society. It is about what society that we want. It is about how we want things to run. And I don't want that. Nobody wants that. They just haven't had that brought to their attention. And so for me, I feel like this is this is a big fight. And I do feel like I'm glad that I started doing the law degree, and I saw the writing on the wall with this stuff a long time ago. Sorry, my nose is itching like fuck. If it goes red, that's why. I've got an anti-red filter, so on my face, because I do get, but if that's what shows up, if it fucking starts suddenly glowing like a thing, that's why. Nespresso. No, you have a Nespresso machine. They got DRM in the coffee. Oh my God. Literally DRM in the capsules, man. For fuck's sake. Doesn't matter. There's no, it doesn't matter. It's convenient. We all make the trade. We make the trade-off. But you can make the trade-off and you've got to be aware of the trade-off that you're making. And I'm not saying that this is all going to happen. I'm saying that it's not implausible, right? Like the same thing with my uncle with the eye tracking thing. Like for that is I would say for safety reasons, using that, it's not so much about the tech. I don't oppose the tech. I like tech. I think it's great. I think it's cool. But using the truck as an example, tracking him and alerting him and waking him up if he's showing signs of fatigue, absolutely, I think that's a useful, great tool, which is like, no, I think you should have a break. I think you should pull over. You're a bit tired. Okay. But I think that it should end there. So it's how it's applied and how it's used. And it should be not used to, you get what I'm saying? Like it should not be used to then micromanage and restrict his rights and put him under basically effective surveillance. Like the way that this eyeball tracking software is being used in the US is really bad. Like docking your pay, for various things. Like the way that it is used in the United States is just abhorrent. Thankfully, we still have some fabric of society left here, and like the thread has not been fully pulled on society here yet. Thankfully, for now, because we don't have like that government anymore. Thankfully, we can maybe fix it. But what if like I don't want actuaries to run the show, right? Fuck that shit. What if your landlord had access to all of your data and could use it to fucking, put you under surveillance? And, like they're already, the reason why the rents are going up is because they're performing minute by minute projections and calculations based on what it's valued at any given moment. And the landlord will put that up. It's no longer a conversation between the owner of the house and the tenant. It is an algorithm that the real estate agents use, and they say to the landlord, they go, the owner, they go, you can get this much. You should get this much. Okay. And so the real estate company are incentivized because they get a cut. So they get more fees. They get a higher percentage based. I think some of them do rent-based pricing, right? So they get a percentage of the rent, 10%. So they're not incentivized to do anything but put the rent up as well. They're not bright people to begin with. They're fucking 6-week course and you're in, right? They don't do any law or ethics or anything like that. It's generally like low-hanging fruit in terms of, I've got family members that are in that industry, and let's say they're not the brightest of cookies, right? They're just going to the system. It's just the system. It's just the computer. Computer says no. Computer says, yeah. The computer says that you should put your rent up to 20%. Fuck them. That's what the computer says. The computer says this. Computer says that. Computer says no. Computer says yes. Computer says fuck them. And it's like, computer is not in charge. Fuck off. The computer is a tool that you use as a guide. It's not and this is the problem with, again, not bright people with too much power. So again, it's not a coincidence that a lot of these AI tools are being used to create shitty bosses as well. So it's not so much, again, it's not about the tech. It's about how it would be used by a shitty boss and a shitty person. And it's just the way that the incentives are put in. So recruiters, right, where they, that use these tools, not bright, no training needed, young, idiotic, and also, they're not terribly clever people to begin with. And so they'll just put in a list of, criteria and just advertise a role and just pick the person who knows how to play the game, right? If I was applying for a job right now, I'd just have an AI write my cover letter for the job. That would be me. Fuck it. They're going to use AI, I'll use it back. But I'm not applying, so I'm not doing that. But I'm saying that's what you got to do. Like you got to figure out how to stack the keywords, right? You don't want to find the candidate, and also make sure that you have all of this identifying information, not on your shit. That no red flags, right? Check for any red flags, right? The fact that my name has an accent on it, and is probably enough that I remember someone I turned up to an interview and they're like, I thought you were Chinese. It's like, well, it's French for a start, but okay, all right, okay. But people just, what was I going to say? Or they thought I was foreign because I've got an accent on my name. And it's like that's going to be built into these tools. which is to screen out people with unusual names or certain, certain spellings and certain things that, culturally biased, let's put it that way, right? Having an Indian name, do you think that's going to get you ahead? Or Aboriginal name, right? So it's like, okay, but then you've also got like real estate agents and recruiters and all these like dumbasses that have way too much power and way too much, in proportion to their training and education, they have too much power, right? And AI, they're ripe for that stuff with AI because like they're not thinking about what the tools are doing. They don't know about bias. Like, they think the cloud is actually a cloud and that's about it. And they don't really think it through. And they just go, oh yeah, well, so dummies are running the show as much as, dummies who blame the system and the computer says no, they're the ones that run the show. It's like, well, no, you need to have laws so that it's illegal for them to use these tools because they're not necessarily going to educate themselves or, they're not going to bother, right? My sister's a property manager. Okay, she runs a property management business. I don't talk to her anymore. And she absolutely just is incurious. So you try to explain anything to her. She thought that the cloud was actually a fucking cloud. And I saw it in her face. She's like, what's the cloud? And I was like, you think it's a cloud, don't you? She went, yeah. I was like, okay, well, it's not. Then I started to explain. She goes, boring. And then she's obnoxious. But, that was the thing. Anytime you try to explain anything to her. But she makes a fortune because she's a property manager and she just uses these tools, these automated tools to screen and manage tenants. We had a property manager who would skip from he'd move from tenancy app to tenancy app because he was a solo guy and he would jump from tenancy app to tenancy app. But what he did was that we were on one and then he moved to the other, but he didn't close out the other one. And I got an email about 2 years later that said, you are 3 years behind on your rent. And you go, that matters because at some point, someone might scrape that data and say that we didn't pay rent for 3 years and we have no way of correcting that information, knowing where it went, knowing who's got it. And it's like, it's not true. And it's like, but you don't know because you're in a rental market of people where they're just looking at the tool and they're going, oh no, that person is behind on their rent. And it's like, well, no, we never were. That was, he switched the app and then you can't talk to a person because it's all automated in a chatbot and you're like, no, this is incorrect information. No, computer says no. Computer says no. It was the computer. The system says that it's fine. You should have paid your rent then. I did! And that's where you end up in that loop. And it's like, this is not how we run things. It's like, we can't run things this way. We have rights. Users have rights. People have rights. And we need to start putting gates around things, right? That's a very real example that has happened to us that I sit there and I worry about these apps and that app in particular where that guy just abandoned his CRM and moved to another one and didn't close it off. And I got an email that said that we were like behind on our rent by $30,000. And it's like, well, who's got that? Where does that go? Who's got that information and how do I correct it? I don't know. Who's got it? Who do I contact? I don't know. And so somewhere along the line, AI is being trained to assess us somewhere. Like that could be, what if I'm in front, okay, here's another thing. I'm facing registration as a lawyer in a year and a half. Oh, probably in 2 years, right? About 2 years, I'll be registered as a lawyer. I need to show good fitness of character, which includes my finances, my, reputation, all those sorts of things. How do I have pretty much accepted that I'm going to have to compete with my own burn book with these things where it's going to say, well, that's wrong. That's not right. My Twitter data, that says that. You're a terrible person because you said this. And it's like, well, okay, that's wrong. And it's like, well, what's my recourse? It's like, that's going to be the next thing is doing background checks and assessing candidates based on AI. That's another thing. Do you want a background check done with the stuff that I've told you? Oh, well, she sped once in 1997 because she was running late for work and, well, she's uninsurable now. Insurance companies already won't give you life insurance if you've ever taken an SSRI. And so many people get put on SSRIs, like especially women, okay, get put on antidepressants for after they have babies or they have pain or anything like that. Anytime you go to a doctor, they think you're depressed, so they put you on an SSRI. And if you put that you were on an SSRI, they won't insure you for life insurance, okay? And if you say you weren't and you try to claim, they might actually, if they catch that, they'll sue you for fraud, insurance fraud. And it's like, well, I think every doctor who puts a woman on an SSRI should probably mention that, right? But what do you want those decisions now made by AI? No. Okay, that's discriminatory. I imagine that discrimination is now illegal or been challenged. I haven't checked for years, but I imagine that it is. But it's like, you got to think about these things. And technology is just turning this stuff on hyperdrive, and we haven't even solved some of the problems from before LLMs sort of went mainstream. We had structural problems with capitalism before that. Okay, it's not the biggest threat is not misinformation and disinformation or AI. I mean, yes, it's all related, but the biggest threat right now is capitalism. And no one will. It's like, unless you say something about the economic situation and the imbalance of power and all of those things that are going with it, you have no credibility talking about the threat of AI or the threat. Where does the threat come from? What is the root cause of the threat? The root cause is greed, and the root cause is recklessness, and the root cause is that you actually want to bring about. So this is what it's like like the threat to democracy. People, it's like, yeah, you're saying it's like, yeah, but you do know that you're anti-democratic. It's all that same stuff. They're pretending. They're talking around it because they still want the economic structure and the economic spoils that comes from capitalism. But if they chip away at the sides and talk about disinformation or AI ethics or biased algorithms, and they just sort of talk around it, we won't have to look into the sun directly and go, you know what? No, it doesn't work. We've done this and we need to fix that, right, and redesign the system. So, but anyway, that's why I'm kind of doing the pivot. But with this channel, I'm not sure where it's just streams at this point. I'm going to go in a sec because I've been going for nearly 2 hours. I have a hard cap on 2 hours now. Unless it's like a big thing, like an election or something. I don't have time. But I'll just be streaming and hanging out and, because I think this channel's just dead from reporting as well. So I'm thinking of spinning out something else. I may do a little bit more kind of pre-recorded, documentary style, actual scripted stuff, not just meandering like I do here. And trying to do some stuff on the sort of darker side of tech. So that's a channel that I'd like to do more and deep diving and into the darker side of technology that we're not really necessarily thinking about, and bringing that all together for everyone. And my gap is resources, because it's just me, and also I fucking hate editing. But obviously when it's just you got to do the writing and the filming and the recording and the editing and the graphics and the all of the stuff, the rendering. And it's like, and if it's not, it's like, I'm not a filmmaker, and I'm happy to do the content and happy to do the work, but like I've got to make money, I've got to eat, got to live, all those sorts of things. So but I do try to do it. Part of the reason I live stream is because that's the only resources I can do. And also editing takes forever. I can't justify 3 days editing clips every time I stream, right? I just don't have the resources to do it, and I refuse to pay. I'm not going to be one of those people that exploits cheap or free labor, right? I just don't. Even if I use my son, who's a YouTuber, right? I will pay him, right? Even if he's my son, I'll pay him because he's putting labor, right? It's just a principle. That's called having principles, which I know a lot of people do not have, and it puts you behind. But I'd rather stick to the principle, even if it's like, even if I have to sacrifice for it. And hope that everything works out. Now, I will try to pitch some projects and get some funding. If I was going to work on things, it would be like the series, the dark side of tech would be a really good thing to work on as a discrete project, but also finishing my book and just getting my website done and all of that sort of stuff. If you become a patron, it would be very much appreciated. I know everyone is broke as shit right now, so I have no expectations of that. But it's welcome, never expected. And thank you if you do already support me. I very much appreciate it. But I do want to sort of focus more on tech policy. I mean, it's not really any different to, but it's just, I'm thinking about where I go and where I'm most useful, and where I seem to be most useful is bringing to the surface some of these invisible things that you might not have thought of, ethical conversations around tech, some exposing maybe some of the darker side of tech that you might not have thought of, especially around like the global south stuff with content moderation and the water use of and the environmental stuff, things that you hadn't really thought of, because it's like with fast fashion, it's like, and sweatshops, it's like, yeah, you get your t-shirt, but yeah, once you're aware, you're going to hopefully change your behavior, or at least as soon as you can, because obviously there's no ethical consumption, right, under capitalism, right? At the end of the day, we've got to we've got to reorganize everything. But at the same time, you can at least be thoughtful about where you put your money and try your best and not buy from places like Temu, for example. Okay. That said, there's also another ethical, so exploring some of these things, right? Which is that I'm not going to judge you for buying from Temu, because there's also an ethical argument that things from China, you're just going direct, right? You're getting the stuff direct from the warehouse versus the, more expensive brand, and you're paying more for the retail store like locally, right? So that's where it becomes a grey area. But thinking about where it might have been made, also understanding that most of the stuff on Temu that physically cannot be made without labor being treated really poorly, and like with AI, like with Midjourney. There is a way to make AI ethical, okay, with licensing fees for artists, okay? So there is an ethical option. So with a company that has an ethical option, I think we should be harsher than if there is no real, again, I'm a moderate here. There's areas of grey, right? You can't fix every problem all the time. You can't just go smash everything and give up. You kind of got to bite off small chunks. I've still got a Midjourney subscription. I'll still use it, but I'll just make sure that I'll make sure that I give attribution. I won't pass it off as my own. I won't use it in a commercial sense. I'll just use it for my own little stupid thumbnails or whatever, and make sure that it's transformative when I do. There's things that there's ethical ways to use things and unethical ways to use them. And maybe that's where I can maybe help a little bit. But also pushing because a lot of tech people, have the same concerns, but they're kind of under threat as well. They're feeling sort of they can't speak up either, because they're either under NDAs or they're having layoffs at the moment, and so everyone's a bit afraid to speak. There's kind of a chilling effect in tech where because they get paid quite a lot of money, there's a perception that they get paid a lot more, so they can't complain about the conditions that they work in, which are actually pretty terrible. But so it's like there's a guilt attached there. So if I can somehow tell some of those stories, I'll be quite happy and feeling like I've made a little bit of a difference. But yeah, just for now, as of now, I'm not spending that much time on X. I'm logging in like 5 minutes at the beginning of the day and 5 minutes later on. It's not on my phone. I'm using it just to sort of, if you see me posting, it's just like a quick, I'm sharing something or whatever, but I'm just sort of backing away until I see some evidence that it's getting better. If you see evidence that it's getting better, let me know and I'll go and look and I'll come back. But right now, LinkedIn, I've got a hungry audience on LinkedIn dying to hear what I've got to say, and on X all I get is abuse and silence. So it's like, well, it's not the right audience. I could take my own advice. You go where the audience is always. And same thing with YouTube. Like, I don't know if I've got much of an audience on YouTube for various reasons, mostly because this started out as a turf channel and sort of I went off into other things and people lost interest and I wasn't doing clips and the American fucking ecosystem has no place for people like me because they don't listen to people with Australian accents. And also, they're all in rah-rah culture wars land. They're not really interested in what I've got to say. So they just want to get one over. They just want to talk about boring American politics all the time. And I have no interest in that shit anymore. It's like, I'm only interested in it insofar as its influence on the rest of us, where we all have to suffer the fucking consequences of everything that happens in America because they're American tech companies. And so the culture wars infects the rest of us, whether we like it or not. But I think for the most part, I'd prefer to just focus on the substantive things that we can do and can change and help tech people unionize, help with policy, that sort of stuff, help like explain the law and court cases and regulation and break stuff down. So if there's stuff that you want to know about, then let me know, right? That's where I'd like to be. But it's not me just changing with the wind and going, oh, I'm going to follow the AI thing now. It was just that I hadn't looked into it. And now that I've looked into it, like, I'm just not okay with it. I'm not okay with how it's going. I'm not okay with how algorithms are running everything and how open they are for manipulation, how they encourage exploitation, like throughout the supply chain in tech, whether it is like influencers or like astroturfing or fake traffic or, all that sort of stuff, propaganda and disinformation, but also like the physical stuff, like the environmental impact of just, training AI, right? Is I've read that like to train Google's AI, to train Google Bard used as much energy and polluted just as much as all of Ireland did in a year, I think. Something, don't quote me, but it was something, I remember it, can't remember if it was a month or a year, but it was a lot. I think it was a month. But like as much as Ireland uses. That's the kind of compute power that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. So I want to start diving more into that. I think it was actually every day. It is the same. It uses the same as Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look it up. I read so much of the fucking research and I see it and I clip it into Zotero and then I forget about it. And then I need to get better at like not saying things before I know that they're accurate, because that's one part of it as well. Can't be talking about disinformation. But don't quote me on stuff unless I'm sure, right? Unless I'm showing you a stat on the screen, don't quote me, because I'm usually just talking and I'm just remembering or misremembering. But I would like to go more into that and get people sort of critical, and also educating people about how AI runs our life and how that stuff works, because I think people really just don't understand that we are living in fucking Big Brother. And I mean that the thing is, you can't even say that anymore because the far right have co-opted that too. And they appear to have never read Orwell, because what they've said is the most Orwellian shit ever, which is the fact that Orwell was opposed to them. If you know Orwell or his life or his politics at all, you were the enemy, guys. But we are living in a very terrifying, potentially dystopian situation. And I think that if I have to go, this is where people are going to think I just flipped, because I will be softening certain things, because some of the ESG stuff, okay, however you feel about the sort of woke washing and stuff, there are people there who are trying to fix these problems, and you can't fix them unless you're sort of playing that game, right? It's kind of a chicken and the egg problem, and there are a lot of people who work very, very hard, and so it's not, it's not baby and bathwater shit, but I do want to try and be part of the change, and you have to kind of swallow it and not go, oh, ESG is just capitalism, fuck all of it, then you end up being like Elon Musk. Right? You end up being like, DEI must die. You end up being an idiot. It's like, no, DEI has its problems, and yes, it's woke washing, but the people who are working in it believe in it, and it has its stuff as well, right? And it's the same thing with greenwashing and all that stuff. It's easy to accuse others of greenwashing when you're not doing anything, okay? But if you are actually funding, for example, funding hydro projects or whatever, but you're also you get what I'm saying? Like, if you're actually funding the projects, then you go, well, you're doing something. So I feel that kind of dilemma. But I have flipped on tech. Like, I've decided that tech is like the big tobacco. I mean, I didn't need to decide it. It's been true for ages. I've said that fucking for years. But they've flipped into sort of to a point where I have to oppose these things and be more vocal about it and more anti-tech. Hate the player, hate the game, but I do have a problem with anybody who is pushing tech, pushing AI, disrespecting artists. You may have seen the George Carlin AI that they're proposing at the moment. The first thing that I did was check whether Kelly Carlin approved this George Carlin AI, and her position, she did not approve. Therefore, I do not approve. You got to ask. They need consent. They can't just take it. These comedy guys that I've never heard of, comedians I'd never heard of, and I know every comic that ever existed because I watch everything and I'm obsessed with stand-up, right? Never heard of them. And they're now reanimating George Carlin into an AI as a gimmick. And he would absolutely 1,000%, 1,000,000% oppose that, unless he was behind on his tax. He might sell his likeness to get out of his tax bill. But George Carlin's very special to me. But Kelly was like my first reflex was, how does Kelly feel about this? Kelly said, for fuck's sake, let him die. He's got 14 specials for you to wonder what he would have thought. Let a guy die. I feel the same way. She doesn't like it. So don't watch it. Don't support it. Okay, that's what you can do. But that desecration. So I talked about this with a friend of mine who was just fucking around with AI and thinking it was a big joke. And it was like, I couldn't articulate why I felt icky about it. And it felt like he was just desecrating the work of artists. Like, it just felt disrespectful to those who actually make art, right? And it's not art. It's soulless, and it is it's just disrespectful to people who actually do spend their lives trying to, like, I'm sure Simon feels the same way about the AI music, where it's like, it's not the same. You dedicate your life to learning how to play guitar. It's not the same as, chucking on ProLogic AI and fucking having it generate a guitar patch. It's like, it's not the same. It is not. It's not music. I'm saying there's degrees to it. And a lot of it comes to consent, and a lot of it comes around to being transparent about whether you've used it, right? Like, for me, my position is, if I'm using AI for anything, is making sure that I tell people that I've used it, where I got it from, what the prompt. One thing I'm going to do is be transparent about the prompt I've used. So if I've generated anything, it'd mostly be like thumbnails or for fun or for a joke or something, right? And disclosing the prompt. So being honest about the prompt I used, and making sure that if I do use anything, or it spits out anything that is similar to a certain artist, right? Because one thing you can do in Midjourney is that you can reverse search that. So what you can do is actually have it describe. So that AI image, when it spits out the AI image, you can then feed that image back and ask it to describe what that image is. And if that image has an artist's name in it, okay, when it, even if you haven't prompted that artist's name, if it has it in there, then you know who they are, and they're alive. And if they're a creator, go and flick them some money, right? There's ethical ways to make it right. Until we sort out the law and until we sort out licensing, it's on us, right, to do the right thing and to feel like we can sleep at night and pay it forward and do the right thing, okay? Don't just sit back and wait for someone else to fix the problem. So if you, I think that's a really good example of, like, if you use Midjourney and you use a piece of something for a thumbnail or whatever, and even if you be honest about the fact you've used AI, be honest about the prompt you've used, but also show the prompt, put it back in to describe it, right? So that what the AI thinks it is. And if the AI shows an artist's name that is a working, living artist or something like that, then you credit them, tag them, promote them, make sure that they get, if you've got some money, become a patron or something, help them in other ways, right? It's tough for being an artist. So that's one way we can do it. I love how they're like, there's no possible system that we can do. It's like, well, there is, which is that you can even tell us who they are. It's called attribution, dickhead. Okay. And you can link to them, and you can link to their profile, and you can let a tip. Even if you don't want to pay a licensing fee, you can build a platform right now where you generate AI and it credits the artists that were the inspiration, and they can have a profile. Okay, even if you don't put smart contracts in NFTs, you can actually use NFT technology. This is what NFT technology was supposed to do, which was track provenance, right, with art. And distribute royalties. That's what NFTs are for, right? That's what they said they were for. So the actual tech exists, but we don't have to rely on tech. We can actually just go, well, you must have attribution to those artists so that people who want to do the right thing can go and donate to that artist. There's a fucking startup for you. Go build that. Okay. So what you could do is, there you go, there's something you could build on GPT platform right now, which is an attribution AI, which reverse engineers whatever it puts out, credits the person and that it was using, and you can then find who they are and give them a tip, right? That you could facilitate that, right? And call it Train or something like that. Right? You've come up with a cool name. See, there you go. Plenty of ideas. That was me just now. Fucking farted that one out. Is it going to work?
That mass murder.
Shit!
Okay. What do we got?
Uh-oh, retard alert!
Anyway, so I'm going to go. I love you. Thank you for coming, watching, all that stuff. I've gone over 2 hours. What's this one? Didn't work. Oh.
Elon. Elon.
Anyway, I'm going to go. Thanks for coming, Simon, and for anyone else who's watching. If you're interacting on LinkedIn, I'm not sure that the comments come through, but I'll go and check and reply if I need to. Become a patron if you want to. I could do with that support, but again, never expected. Always appreciated. I am working again forever on my website, but the newsletter subscription link is broken. You get an error, and that's because I've got the dreaded fucking curl 28 error, and I've got to figure it out. But it is coming through. So it is actually coming through, and you are being signed up. It's just showing you an error. So you can subscribe to the newsletter knowing that it's going to be an error, but like I'll work on that. I've got it's fucking stupid shit. I've always got to deal with stupid errors on that's anyway. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Simon. It's good to see you all. And I haven't left Twitter. I think we all agree that we can't, but I am just limiting my use to skeletons until further notice. I'm disappointed in it too, but until my account's fixed, until I get some indication that they have dealt with any of the problems, then it's just no point. There's no point. I'm just going to go where the audience is. But do follow me on LinkedIn or connect. Don't be afraid to connect with me, or Facebook. I'm still on Twitter, so you could still like message me and go, where are you? And like the links are I've got a pinned link, like with a pinned tweet with all my links and stuff. I just it's not good. That place is not good. It fucks with your head. It's not worth it. Anyway, it makes me sad because I do like it. But at the moment, I'm just going to focus on, I have noticed that I'm writing better. I'm more prolific with my writing. I am producing better quality posts because I'm writing on LinkedIn to an audience of professionals that I know who my target audience is. I know what my topics are. I'm not being pulled away into other shit with like drama and funny shit, and I'm actually like a lot more focused and more productive, so that's good. I until Twitter gets better, I don't know what to do, but anyway, I'm still there. I'm just not there, if that makes sense. So I love you. Take care. Stay warm. Stay cool. I need to piss. I forgot the I need to piss, Stephen. And I'll talk to you soon. I love you. Take care. Bye.
That mass murderer, Karl Marx.
Bye. All right. Thank you. I went too long. I appreciate you. Thank you for saying that, Simon. I appreciate it because I thought I talked shit. And then I watched the replay and I'm fine. It's funny how you think you're shitter and then you watch it and you're like, oh, that was all right. I can't remember. I go back, oh, I said that. I can't remember saying that. So many times. I'm so going to be cancelled someday for whatever I've said. Anyway, bye. Stop streaming. Where's the button? You going to turn off? You going to turn off? Nah. Nah. Alright, I'll do it myself then. And you think, can't even... Why would we run it with AI? I can't even do a basic script to turn off the thing. The fuck?